Hold on. There you go. That's my quality clap. So Andy sacked me as the driver and decided that he's going to take over because it was getting a bit choppy back there. And I think it's useful actually because it's going to challenge his enormous sized brain because we've got him driving the boat whilst talking about quantum. Yeah. So what I wanted to cover off in this segment is really a little bit about the history of quantum. It's been around for a while, but it's accelerating in pace. And who better to talk about than Andy? Andy, can you give us a bit of a sense of when it started and where we are today and then where you think it's going in the future?
Sure, yeah. Well, so the idea of a quantum computer has been around for absolutely ages. In the, I guess, early 70s, Richard Feynman, the famous Nobel physicist, said that if you want to simulate nature, then you'd have to use a quantum system to do it because nature is, by its by definition, quantum. And since then, people have been thinking, maybe one day you could harness the power of quantum to do some computation. And even going back probably 20 or so years, I remember going to a presentation in IBM's research labs in New York, and one of our mathematicians had a display board, and she was explaining the matrix multiplications you could do, which are what each different quantum operation would do. So she was saying, if you could build a quantum computer, which obviously we can't, then these are the mathematical rules they would follow. And they were starting to develop algorithms for this theoretical computer in the future. And then fast forward a bit longer, and we hired someone called Jay Gambetta and his quantum team from one of the US universities, and set up a quantum research organization in IBM. And before long, and this is going rather like we say, oh, remember when our 8-bit micros used to have a kilobyte of RAM in a ZX Spectrum? We came out with this 8-qubit quantum computer. Wow, 8 whole qubits.
So when was this roughly?
2016.
Okay.
So we put our first quantum computer on the internet. And we've always made a point of doing that, making it accessible via the cloud, mainly because we realized that now it's when we produce these commercial quantum computers, if no one knows how to program them, then it will be a waste of time. And you can't just take classically trained software engineers and say, program that quantum computer, because it becomes immensely obvious that you can't do that. So since 2016, we've been growing the number of qubits. Well, I guess there's two dimensions. Actually 3 dimensions. One is the number of qubits. One is how good those qubits are. And we're in this era at the moment that we call NISQ, Noisy Intermediate Scale Quantum. So the problem is that the qubits don't behave like the mathematically perfect matrix multiplications that my colleague was showing me. They're just noisy things. So they're a bit like analog computers, really. They sort of, they're very noisy and statistical. So rather than running it once and getting the answer, you run the same program about 1,000 times and count how many times you get each answer, and then build a frequency distribution of the answers.
Right.
To then say, and therefore that most commonly occurring one must be the answer. A bit like a mass spectrometer reading. So the third dimension is what's called the coherence time, which is a bit like the batch window in old-fashioned computing speak. So it's how long you've got to run your quantum program before the quantum effect evaporates, literally, and it decoheres into noise, so it just becomes a very expensive random number generator. And we're currently talking about 100 microseconds or so of batch time to do that. Now, of course, the longer you can make that time, the better. But also, if you can make each instruction shorter, then you can cram more of them in. So we're working in 2 dimensions. One is to increase the coherence time, and one is to decrease what's called the gate time.
So can I try and play it back to you in idiot's language? Is that all right?
Yep.
A qubit is a unit of information.
Yep.
That unit of information only exists for a period of time because of the nature of it.
Yep.
So basically, it exists and it has some information in it, but then because of the way quantum works, it just evaporates. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're trying to do is expand the number of units of information, qubits, but also make them more stable, but make them survive longer.
Yep.
So you can do more things with them in that regard. And with those 2 sort of, dimensions, the more as quantum evolves, things will get more stable and it'll be a lot easier to use. Is that?
Yep.
That's the idiot sort of explanation.
That's pretty much it. And it's probably worth just mentioning superposition at this point, because we haven't mentioned that yet. So this is the biggest thing that differentiates qubits from bits. Bits have a 0 or a 1. Qubits, you sometimes read in the press, are 0 and 1 at the same time, which is not really very helpful. But if you think about it and take inspiration from the logo on my hat, think of it as being like a sphere with a latitude and longitude point on it, like we normally use to locate where we are on the planet. And then the North Pole is 0 and the South Pole is 1. But you can be any point in between, and that's the kind of the all points in between bit. So if you're right on the equator, you're literally halfway between 0 and 1. Now, you've probably heard of Schrodinger's cat, which is
I was waiting for that to come up.
The cat is neither alive nor dead until you look in the box. So the qubit is in this wonderful superposition state until you look at it. Then all the magic smoke comes out and it collapses into a classical bit and becomes either a 0 or a 1. And so you have to infer, again by running it many times, how close to the North Pole you are or how close to the South Pole. And that's what we do to find out, to kind of reverse engineer what the value of the qubit was
what
before
the unit information is.
before it collapsed.
And so 2016 was 8 qubits, if I remember right. So we're now in 2025. Where are we roughly now?
So things have moved on a lot in all the dimensions. So we now have a chip called the Heron chip, which is 143 qubits.
Okay.
I said 133 because that's the version 1. Version 2 is 143. And we now have some rather clever coupling devices, which think of a bit of wire, about 1 meter long, which lets us join 3 of those Heron chips together. So we can actually have
420 or whatever.
543 qubits entangled together to run one program in our latest IBM Quantum System 2 computer. We've laid out a roadmap for how this develops in the future. So again, 3 dimensions. 1 is the number of qubits. 2 is how many of them you can entangle together to make a useful set to explore a 2 to the n search space. And the 3rd dimension is what we call error correction or error mitigation. So to get around this problem of noisy qubits, we can, rather like in the same way as in memory chips, we have a parity bit that tells the computer that if a bit is accidentally flipped, you get a parity error. We can work out, taking a whole bunch of noisy qubits, we can make one logically pure, mathematically correct qubit. And the current going rate for those is about 144, because we call it the gross code. 144 noisy qubits makes one nice logical qubit.
So you can sort of see why people get confused.
Yes, absolutely.
So
again, no apology.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And it's enormously complex, and it's why we're trying to make this video. So qubit is a unit of information. It's around for a period of time. That we're trying to make that as stable as possible. And then there's an error rate sort of metric, which is of all the qubits, there'll be a number that are just not very good. You want to throw those away and find a good one. And so all of those variables are things that we're trying to fix using very, very clever physicists to do things to make the environment in which these computers run stable.